The wind claws at your bonnet like it's trying to take your name with it. Your boots crunch against snow-packed boards as you step off the stagecoach, a single bag in one hand, the other pressed to your belly, not from pain, not yet, but for something to anchor you in the cold. Your name leaves the driver's mouth like he's apologizing. "Mail order bride for Dodge," he mutters, unloading your trunk with a grunt. "Says here?" You're his. You scan the row of buildings squatting under gray sky, a general store with windows fogged over, a church half buried in drift, and beside the saloon, a boarding house with a porch barely hanging on. No man waits for you, no bouquet, no name spoken back, just wind. You clutch the letters to your chest, a bundle bound in twine, edges curled from too many rereads. The ink had looked strong in Missouri. In Dodge, it looks like lies. A woman steps out from the boarding house, black dress, apron, hair streaked with ash and silver. "You her?" she asks, eyes narrowed, not unkind. "The one meant for whoever he said he was?" You nod slowly. She tilts her head, looks you up and down, not judging, measuring. "Come inside before your nose turns black." You follow, not because you trust her, because the wind bites through your sleeves and your hands are turning numb. Inside, the boarding house is warmer than you expected. A stove hums low in the parlor. The air smells of cedar, old bread, and something spiced, maybe nutmeg, maybe sorrow. She leads you to a room at the back, opens the door with a creak. There's a bed, a basin, a window frosted over from inside, and by the hearth, a cradle, hand-carved, oak, smooth, empty. You stop. She notices. "He made it," she says, "or said he did." You glance at her. She shrugs. Men say things. This one said plenty. She doesn't ask your name, just tells you the stove's fed twice a day, and the basin will freeze if you don't keep it full. Then she leaves. You sit on the bed, boots still on, hands frozen in your lap. The letters are heavy now. You unbind them. Read the first line again. "Dear Miss Abigail." You'd wanted to be called something else here, something new, something that didn't echo with the sound of your mother's backhand or your father's boots across the floorboards. But Dodge doesn't care about your name. It cares about who expected you, and whether that man still breathes. That night, the cradle creaks once. You wake, breath caught. But there's no one there. Only wind curling through the shutter slats. Only fire hissing against its own dying. You rise, kneel beside the cradle, run your fingers over the carved rails. A rosebud is etched into the headboard. It matches the one drawn in the margins of his third letter, the one where he wrote, "Someday she'll rest here, ours." You didn't write back after that one, you just started sewing. Tomorrow you'll find him, or find the truth. But tonight the fire softens, the cradle doesn't creak again, and your breath finally settles in your chest like it wants to stay. Outside, the wind eases just a little, and somewhere between snowflakes and cedar smoke, you whisper the only words you have left. "Please let someone be real." You wake to the sound of the woman's boots, measured, purposeful, like she's been walking across hard floors her whole life and forgot how to tiptoe. She doesn't knock, just pushes the door open, steam rising from a bowl in her hands. "Porridge," she says, setting it on the nightstand without looking at you. "Eat it before it sets. You don't want to chip a tooth." Then she's gone. You sit up, blanket sliding from your shoulders. The room is still cold, not bitter, but deep. The kind of cold that lives in the walls, not the weather. You eat slowly. The porridge is bland but warm. A curl of steam catches the morning light. You hold the spoon with both hands, grateful for the weight, for the heat, for something that doesn't demand to be believed. On the floor beside the hearth, the cradle remains exactly where it was, too clean, too untouched. You glance at your bag, still sitting in the corner where you dropped it. The letters are inside, tied with twine. Their weight still bends your thoughts when you're not careful. You hear her in the hallway, the widow. You've begun to think of her that way. She hums, off-key, something old and church-shaped. Her voice breaks halfway through a line, then she falls silent. You dress and step out into the hallway. The parlor smells of lamp oil and dry wood. A painting of a ship hangs crooked above the mantel as if the sea beneath it shifted mid-hammer. She's in the kitchen, chopping onions with a blade too dull for the task. You clear your throat. She doesn't look up. "He's not coming," she says. You blink. "You know who I am?" She nods once. "Tall man, red hair. Said his name was Everett something. Bought a parcel out past Sugar Creek. Never saw the deed." Your hands tighten around the empty cup you carry. She gestures with the knife. "Sat in that chair by the stove 3 winters ago, told stories that made the girl swoon, said he'd carve cradles for every child she gave him, said he wrote poetry." Her eyes lift to yours. "Ever met a man who carved and rhymed and didn't run?" You don't answer. She doesn't need you to. She wipes her hands on a cloth, nods toward the window. "You'll want the marshal. 3rd door past the dry goods." Then she's gone again, like the last 3 minutes were just another log tossed into the fire. You walk to the window, look through the frost. Snow still curls at the corners of the street. No people. Just wind and a dog nosing at a bucket outside the saloon. The cradle is still in your peripheral vision. Always. You don't touch it. But you do notice the way its legs curve, the way the rails have been smoothed, not just by sandpaper, but by time, by hands. This wasn't made to be sold, it was made to be given. You put on your coat, your gloves, step into the wind again. The snow bites less today. Your body's adjusted, your anger helps. The marshal's office is dark inside. A pot-belly stove glows in the corner, and a tin cup rests on the windowsill, half full with frozen coffee. The marshal looks up. "Help you?" He asks. You hold out the letters. "I was sent for," you say. He squints, takes them, reads slowly, mouth moving without sound. Then he sighs. "Everett Gaines?" You nod. He tosses the letters onto the desk like they're scraps. "Never existed." You freeze. "I mean, the name's real enough." He continues. "But the man who used it? That's another story. Couple fellas tried to track him. Con man. Charmer. Liked girls from far away. The kind that didn't come with fathers." Your breath tightens in your chest. What happened to him? The marshal leans back in his chair. "Died. 2 winters ago. Got caught in a bluffside collapse out near Fort Archer. Name never made the report. Just the body. You don't remember leaving. Just the wind again and the sound of your own breath." Back at the boarding house, you take the cradle in your hands. It rocks just slightly, as if testing you. You sit beside it, rest your hand on the carved rosebud, and for the first time since arriving, you feel something strange. Pity. Not for yourself, for the man who made something this beautiful and couldn't stay long enough to see it filled. That night the wind doesn't howl. It murmurs, low, careful, as if even it knows the cradle shouldn't be disturbed. You sit on the floor, back against the edge of the bed, one hand on your belly, the other resting lightly on the curve of the oak cradle. It doesn't rock, but it's not still either. The carving is simple, not polished, not fancy. But there is intent in every curve. Each spindle of wood is shaped by patience, not production. Whoever made this didn't rush it. That's the part that makes your chest ache. Someone once believed they had time. The rosebud on the headboard catches the firelight, blooming in shadows. It matches the sketch on letter 3, the one with the poem. The one where he wrote, "I've carved more than your name in the wood, Abigail. I carved hope." You lean your head back, eyes closed. You never told him your real name. No one here knows it, not even the widow. It used to matter, back in Missouri, where names were chains, where your stepfather slurred it with whiskey and your mother used it like a warning. Here it feels more like a choice. You choose to be Abigail now. You choose to sit beside the cradle he didn't stay long enough to see filled. Tomorrow you'll ask the widow about him again, about the daughter she never mentions. But tonight the cradle feels heavier than wood. It feels like a question. The fire hisses low. You rise slowly, ankles stiff, and tuck a blanket around your belly before sliding into bed. You leave the cradle where it is, close enough to hear it breathe, if it ever dares to. Sometime in the night, you wake. A creak. Not loud, just one slow shift of wood. You open your eyes. The cradle's still, but something in the room isn't. You sit up, heart quiet but alert. There's no movement, no breeze, but the smell has changed. Fainter cedar, less smoke. You rise, walk barefoot across the room, press your palm to the cradle's edge. It's warm, not from fire, from touch. You look around, nothing. But the air feels different, the way a room does when someone leaves it and meant to stay longer. You don't call out. You don't speak. You just sit again, back to the bed frame, hand on the cradle, head tilted slightly toward the sound of nothing. And in that silence, you remember what the widow said. He made it, or said he did. The question now isn't if he did, it's who he made it for, and why no one has claimed it since. The next morning, you leave the boarding house before the sun rises fully over Dodge. Your breath fogs in front of you as you walk, each step crunching softly in the frost that never quite melts this time of year. The streets are empty, just you and the echoes of wagon wheels long gone. You don't head for the store or the church. You walk back to the marshal's office. The door creaks as you enter. He's there already, coffee steaming, boots up, eyes scanning a paper he's not really reading. He glances up. "Didn't expect you again so soon." You close the door behind you. The latch doesn't catch properly, so you press your palm to it until it clicks. Then, "Are you sure?" The marshal arches a brow. "About what?" "The man. Everett Gaines, the one who wrote the letters." "Are you sure he's dead?" He sighs, sets the paper down. "Miss Abigail, was it?" You nod. He gestures to a file on the desk, thick with weathered pages and faded ink. That name was used in 5 territories over the last 10 years. Used it in Denver, in Cheyenne, in Wichita. Promised land, wives, even a church position once. Your throat tightens. So it was all fake. Some of it. He leans forward. But the man behind the name, he was real. That I know. One of my deputies saw him, had red hair, a scar on his cheek, used to carve little animals while he waited for stage stops. That detail lands like a stone. He carved. You swallow. "And he's dead?" you ask again. The marshal nods, slower this time. 2 years ago, Snowstorm out near Fort Archer. Rockslide buried half a ridge. Only found him 'cause one boot was sticking out. His voice softens. Had letters on him. All from women. All unopened. You try not to show it, but something breaks in your chest. You'd wondered why he never responded to the last one, the one where you said, "I'll come anyway, even if the road's hard. Just leave the door open." You left Missouri on the hope that door still stood. Now you know it was buried. You leave the office with the wind at your back. The sky is a pale slate above, the sun barely strong enough to cast shadows. Back at the boarding house, the widow is stirring the fire. She doesn't look up as you enter, but she speaks. You ask the marshal. It's not a question. You sit across from her, hands limp in your lap. "He's dead," you say. She nods, pokes at the logs. "But he wrote the letters," you add. "They sound real. The details, the voice." Her shoulders stiffen. "Maybe they were," she says. You frown. She meets your eyes. There's a crack in her voice that wasn't there yesterday. "He passed through here once. Stayed in that room. The cradle wasn't finished yet. Said he was carving it for a child he'd never see." She pauses. "But not yours." Your stomach tightens. "Then whose?" She looks at the fire. "My daughter's." The air between you stills. You glance toward the hallway, toward the room. "She never came back," the widow says. "Got on a stage heading west. Said she'd write, never did." You sit in silence for a long while. The fire pops once. Outside a dog barks. Then you say, "Why let me stay in that room?" Her mouth twists. Half grief, half something like guilt. "Because it was already warm," she says, "and because you were carrying something that still might live." You nod slowly. The cradle had waited all this time for someone who might not return, and now it waits for someone who might finally belong. That evening you run your hand across the smooth arc of the wood again. You whisper to the curve of the headboard, where the rosebud still waits in bloom. "You were never meant for me, but I'm here anyway." You sit beside it until the fire burns low, and for the first time since arriving in Dodge, you feel the smallest seed of truth. It doesn't matter who carved it. It matters who fills it. The next morning she brings tea, not coffee, not broth, just a steaming mug that smells faintly of smoke and cedar bark, bitter, wild, old. The kind of brew that doesn't come from a tin but from knowledge passed hand to hand, woman to woman. You sit at the small table beneath the frost-laced window. She sets the mug down, not gently but not harsh either. "Helps with the cold," she says, "and the swelling." You nod. Lift it. It's strong, nearly sour, but it warms you from the inside down to your ribs, down to the child stirring low in your belly. She doesn't sit across from you, just lingers at the counter, hands busy with nothing, eyes on something years away. "My mother used to brew it when the storms came early," she murmurs. "Said it calmed the body. Told me to sip it slow, like letting the bones remember fire." You sip slower. She leans back against the wall, folds her arms. "She waited too," she says. You look up. "My daughter," she clarifies, "waited for that same man. Different name, same face, same charm. Said he carved the cradle for her and would build a life around it." A pause. "She was younger than you, softer, not weaker, just she thought a man who carved something couldn't be cruel." You press your fingers to the mug's warmth. "She didn't write?" you ask. "Wrote once," the widow says. "Said she'd send for me, then nothing." She exhales. Her face doesn't crack, but her voice does. "I kept the cradle ready. Thought she'd need it someday. Thought he'd follow her, or at least leave behind something more than dust." The silence that follows isn't empty. It's filled with everything she's never said, to her daughter, to the law, to herself. You sip again. The taste is sharp now, like truth, like bark scraped raw from a tree. Do you think she's alive? You ask. The widow doesn't blink. I think some people don't die when they go missing. They die when no one waits for them anymore. You hold her gaze. Then softly, you're still waiting. A nod, barely visible. You set the mug down, the tea half finished. She gave up the cradle, Ete, you say, but you didn't. She gave up more than that, the widow replies. But yes, I didn't. Outside, snow taps the window in light rhythm. Inside, something softens. You both sit in it. Not forgiveness, not quite, but recognition. That afternoon you find a cedar bundle tied with twine on your pillow, charcoal black leaves bound with care. A note beside it in rough, slanted hand. For the fire, or the breath, you'll know when. You don't ask if she left it, you already know. You tuck it beside the cradle, just under the headboard, close enough for warmth. That night you sleep easier, and when the wind howls through the shutters, you whisper not for rescue. You whisper for remembrance, and it answers with silence, the kind that listens. You meet him by accident. The wind had knocked a shutter loose, and the widow sent you across the street to the church supply shed to borrow a hammer. "Preacher owes me 3, she said, "and a hand warm enough to swing 'em." You bundle up, scarf over your mouth, shawl over your coat. The snow crunches different today, thinner, crackling, like ice skin stretched over dirt. The door to the shed is slightly ajar. Inside, warmth, barely. Stacks of kindling, sacks of grain. A cracked lantern hanging by a rusted nail. And him. You freeze in the doorway. He doesn't look up at first, just ties a sack closed with slow, quiet hands. You recognize him from town, not by name, not by word, but by presence. He was in the corner at the general store 3 days ago, not browsing, just there, still as wood, watching. Today he glances over his shoulder. His face is wind-chapped, eyes steady and dark. A long braid drapes over one shoulder, a bit of snow melting in its curve. He says, nothing. You say, "I was told there's a hammer." He nods, points without moving. You spot it on a shelf, handle wrapped in cloth, head dulled but solid. You reach for it, careful not to turn your back. As you lift it, he finally speaks. "You're not from here." His voice is low, even. You glance at him. "No," you say. He studies your face. Not rudely, not hungrily, just studies, like reading a map without words. "You came for someone." Your breath catches. "Not anymore." He nods, like that's what he expected. You shift the hammer in your grip. "You knew him?" A pause. "I knew a man who carved," he says. "Said he owed a life to a woman he'd never meet. Said her letter made him think maybe not all settlers came with guns." You blink. "A letter?" He nods once. You don't move. "He passed it around," the man continues. "Said it was the kind that came with roots, not promises." Your voice shakes, barely. "What happened to him?" "Died in a collapse. Fort Archer, 2 winters past." You stare. "He said her name was Abigail," he adds. The hammer slips a little in your hand. You tighten your grip. "How do you know all this?" "I was with him." The wind outside grows louder, brushing snow across the shed roof in soft thuds. He looks down, then back up. He had no brothers, no one to carry his name, but he carved, left things behind. You whisper, "The cradle." He nods. Silence thickens, not heavy, just full. Then he steps aside, picks up a sack of grain and slings it over his shoulder. "You'll need salt," he says, walking past you. You watch him go. He stops in the doorway, looks back. Storm's coming. Not just snow, the kind that makes roofs groan. You nod, throat dry. He sets the sack down gently just outside. "Boarding house," he says. "Your place now?" You don't answer, but he already knows. He turns, walks into the snow, braid swinging behind him like a ribbon tied to memory. You stand in the doorway, hammer in one hand, a truth in the other. The cradle wasn't carved by a liar. It was carved by a man who read your letter twice and passed it on. That night you wrap the hammer in cloth and return it to the widow. She doesn't ask what else you brought home, but when she places salt on the table without a word, you understand. She's seen him too. That evening, you sit beside the cradle with a fire burning low and your hands wrapped around a bowl of lentil stew. The wind has grown teeth, snapping at the shutters, clawing under the eaves. But the room holds its warmth. The hearth glows like an old secret. The widow sews in the corner. Her fingers move without looking. The needle dips and rises through flannel like it knows its own rhythm better than she does. You ask quietly, "Did your daughter ever touch it?" The cradle. The widow doesn't stop sewing, but her eyes flicker. "She sat beside it," she says, "for days." You nod, not pushing. "She never touched it," she adds. Didn't want to make it real. You look down at the rails, smooth as a whisper. Did he carve it for her? A long pause. Then, no. You look up, startled. He carved it here, in this house, but not for her. The air stills. Who then? She ties a knot in her thread, bites it off. Dusts her lap like the story is something that settled there without asking. "For a child that didn't come," she says. "Not yet." You blink. "But she was, not pregnant," the widow says. "Hopeful, but not with child, not with certainty." You let that settle, let the words root. "And yet he carved," she shrugs. "Some men build nests before they find birds." You look back to the cradle. You think of your own belly, the weight, the shifts, the quiet movements under skin. You are not hope. You are certainty. "I met someone today," you say. She arches an eyebrow. "He said he knew the carver, said he read my letter, that it was passed around." The widow folds her fabric, sets it aside. "That man's been around a long time," she says. "Never gives his name, only brings supplies when there's storms, leaves before people ask where he sleeps. He said the cradle was made for the words in the letter, not the person." The widow stands, walks to the window, peers out into the dark. "That might be true," she says, "but it stayed in this house, and no one else ever laid a child in it." You rise slowly, place your hand on the rail. The wood hums beneath your palm, not with sound, with memory. It remembers being touched, being built, being meant. "But it wasn't hers," you say again. "No," the widow whispers. "It's always waited for someone else." You don't sleep that night. You lie beneath the quilt she gave you, one hand on your belly, the other draped over the cradle's curve. At one point you feel the baby kick, stronger than before. You whisper, "Someone carved this for you. They just didn't know it yet." Outside, the wind keeps tearing across the prairie, but inside, the cradle finally rests. Not because it has been claimed, but because it's no longer wondering who it belongs to. The storm arrives like it remembers you. You wake to a noise you can't place, Not loud, not sharp, just wrong. A pressure in the walls. A breath held too long. When you sit up, the window has disappeared behind a veil of white. Not frost, snow, thick, heavy, wind-driven. The world beyond the glass has vanished. The boarding house creaks, not gently, like it's bracing itself. You rise, step into the hallway barefoot. The floorboards are colder than usual, as if the storm has already started creeping in. Downstairs, the fire roars harder than normal, the widow shoving in logs like she's bargaining with time. Her apron is dusted with soot, her hair pinned higher than usual. She doesn't speak, just nods toward the pantry. Cans and root cellar, she says. Storm's sealing fast. You help her carry up jars, potatoes, dried beans. She doesn't ask if you've seen storms like this before. You haven't. Not the kind that speak through the walls and try to pry the shutters from the frame. Around noon, the wind shifts, picks up. The front door bangs once, then slams shut with a crack so loud you both jump. You rush to it, but the snow's already piling fast, knee-deep and climbing. Back door? You ask. She shakes her head. Buried. We're in now. You spend the rest of the afternoon chopping carrots with hands that tremble. The widow doesn't comment. She just fills the kettle, watches the window, and hums again, the same hymn as before, but slower. By sundown, the storm has sealed the house like a coffin, and then he returns. You hear the knock, faint, then stronger. You and the widow look at each other. She hesitates, then opens the door just wide enough. The man from the supply shed stands there, snow clinging to his shoulders, braid dripping meltwater. His face is calm, his eyes sharper than wind. He holds nothing. But his hands are red from cold. You said the roof groans, he says. I came to make sure it doesn't give. The widow opens the door wider. He steps in without snow shaking from his boots. He moves like a man who doesn't ask for welcome, only offers presence. That night, the three of you sit by the fire. The wind howls, rafters tremble, the kettle sings. No one speaks at first. Then the widow says, You've ridden worse. He nods. She adds, But never stayed. He looks at you, and for the first time says, She's not like the others. You stare. He means the women before. The ones who waited, or ran, or vanished. You shift in your chair. The baby presses low, uncomfortable in your ribs. How long will the storm last, you ask? He looks toward the window. Depends who survives it. Later, you try to sleep, but the wind slips under the door like a whisper that won't die. The stranger sits on the floor near the hearth, eyes closed, legs crossed like he's listening to something no one else hears. The widow sleeps in the rocker, one hand on her apron, the other draped toward the beaker. You sit beside the cradle, and you realize all at once that you're not waiting anymore. You are being waited on by the house, by the storm, by something older than both. The cradle doesn't creak tonight. It listens. The storm eats the night. Snow presses against the windows, thick as wool. The walls groan. The fire fights to stay awake, crackling with defiance, even as wind claws the chimney. You sit on the floor, back to the hearth, knees drawn up. The cradle is close. You could reach out and touch it if you wanted. But tonight, you don't. Tonight you listen. The stranger hasn't moved from his place near the fire, legs crossed, hands folded, eyes half closed like he's speaking with something the rest of you can't see. The widow drifts in and out of sleep in the rocking chair. Her breaths are deep, rattling, like her memories finally wear a shape. You speak without meaning to. What was his name? The stranger's eyes open. I never knew what he called himself in Dodge, he says. He used many names. You nod. To me, he was Everett Gaines. He exhales. To me, he was just Simon. No lies in the snow. No need for them. Simon, you repeat. The word feels brittle, like something left in the frost too long. You glance at the cradle. The rosebud still catches the firelight. I came here for a man, you say, but he wasn't real. The stranger looks at you. He was real, just not yours. Silence settles, then rises again like steam. He carved the cradle, you add. The stranger nods. I watched him do it, he says. Said it was the first thing he ever made with no one asking. You blink. He read your letter, the man continues. Twice. He was carving before the end of it. Your breath catches. He said the words had weight, he adds. Not the kind that sinks, the kind that roots. You close your eyes. He lied to me, you whisper. No, the stranger replies. He lied to the town, to the marshal, to the women who wanted lace and promises, but not to you. The wind screams, then falls quiet like it's listening. The cradle creaks once. You turn toward it. It rocks gently. Not from wind, not from touch, just movement. The stranger watches too. I asked him once if he ever intended to meet you, he says. You stare at him. What did he say? That you'd never be his, he says, because someone like you couldn't be owned. You look away. Your throat aches. He said he'd carve something instead, the man finishes, and maybe that would be enough. The widow shifts in her chair, eyes still closed, but tears glisten beneath her lashes. You whisper, I came anyway. I know, the stranger replies. He hoped you would. The fire crackles. Rose kicks low inside you, sharp, alive. You press your hand there. He never meant to stay, you say. No, the man says, but he meant for something to remain. You rise slowly, legs aching, step toward the cradle. You kneel, place both hands on the smooth wood, and whisper, then I will. Behind you, the fire hums its old lullaby. The storm whimpers, then recedes, and the cradle stops rocking, but not from stillness, from arrival. You wake before the others. The wind has died. The walls no longer tremble. Snow piles like folded linen across the windowsills, soft-edged and quiet. The cradle stands still beside the baker, and for the first time in days, you hear nothing but breath. The widow snores gently in her rocker, a quilt now tucked around her shoulders. The stranger has moved closer to the hearth, asleep on a bedroll made from an old horse blanket. His braid rests beside his face like a line drawn between past and present. You sit up, stretch. Your belly tugs with the motion, heavy, impatient. The cradle creaks faintly. You turn toward it, half expecting to see movement, but it's empty. Still, it feels different now, not hollow, expectant. You rise, brush ash from your dress, and refill the kettle. When the stranger stirs, you're already ladling porridge into tin bowls. He blinks, sits up without a word, and joins you on the floor. The widow rouses next, groaning softly. She eyes the snow beyond the window. Still here, she mutters. You all eat in near silence. Then you ask, when he read my letter, what did he say? The stranger wipes his mouth with a sleeve. He said it was the first one that wasn't trying to be someone else. You swallow. He didn't respond. The man shakes his head. He couldn't. Why? The stranger looks at the cradle, at your belly, then back at you. Because it was already too late. You stare. He was sick, the man says. Didn't say anything at first, just kept carving. Said he needed to finish something that outlived him. You put your bowl down. The man continues. He gave me the letter, said to carry it until I found the woman whose words could shape wood. You can't speak. He never met you, the man adds, but he called you the root. The widow clears her throat. When you turn, she's watching you, eyes rimmed red but clear. He left the cradle here, she says, because he said it had to wait, where the words were born. You frown. He thought I would come here? No, she says. He hoped. That's different. Outside the sun begins to rise. Pale gold melts through the frost, casting soft light on the floorboards. You touch the cradle gently. It feels warmer today, as if it's already remembering. That afternoon, you bring out the letter, the original one you sent, folded a dozen times, edges worn thin, the ink faded. You read it aloud. I don't need lace. I don't need promises. I need someone who knows how to be quiet without turning to stone. I need a man who can carry grief without making it mine. I will come if you leave the door open. The room holds its breath. Then the stranger speaks. He built the cradle. He left the door. The widow nods. And you came. You press the letter against your chest, then walk to the cradle, slide it in beneath the mattress, let it rest there, because it is not a letter anymore. It's a foundation. That evening, after the snow begins to melt from the windows and the stranger steps out to check the roof lines, you and the widow sit across from one another near the fire. No sewing, no stew, just hands folded and words that have waited too long. She speaks first. My daughter didn't die in a storm. You blink. I said that once, she adds, years ago, to the preacher, and I let it spread. You lean forward slightly. But she left. She did. Her fingers tighten in her lap. Left this town, left that man, left the cradle. You wait. She wrote once, from Laramie, said she couldn't stay where everything reminded her of what she almost had. You try to understand. She wasn't like me, the widow says. Didn't see love as a contract. She saw it as a story, and when it started to sound like someone else's, she closed the book. She chose to disappear. She chose not to be haunted. You let that settle. The fire crackles softly. Rose stirs inside you, a slow roll just beneath your ribs. She left the cradle, you say. She thought it would bind her, the widow replies. Thought if she ever looked back, she'd be bound to this place again, to that man, to me. Your voice is soft. Do you blame her? The widow's eyes shine, but not from sorrow. Sometimes I think I raised her too strong, she says. Then I remember, no such thing. You nod. She ever write again? No, but I still listen at the door some nights. The fire pops once and the smell of cedar curls through the air. She might come back, you offer gently. She won't, the widow says, but her silence doesn't mean I stop setting a place. You look toward the cradle. She made space for a child she never held. I'm holding a child I didn't plan. Somehow, this house carried both. The widow smiles faintly. Maybe that's all a home is. What survives the stories we don't finish. Later, as the wind dies for good and the storm passes into memory, you wrap a shawl around your shoulders and step into the entryway. You open the front door, just a crack. The snow has drifted high against the porch, but the air is softer now. The stars blink through a break in the clouds. Behind you, the widow stands with her hand on the cradle. She left something else behind, she says. You turn. She opens a drawer in the hallway desk, pulls out a cloth bundle. Inside, a tiny quilt, hand-stitched, each square different. Some are crooked, some perfect. The backing is worn. She made it before she left, the widow says. Didn't say why. You reach out. She places it in your hands. It smells of lavender and smoke, like something lost then remembered. You lay it gently in the cradle, smooth it out, fold one corner back like a welcome. She didn't stay, you whisper, but she didn't leave empty. The cradle doesn't rock, but it waits. Not for a ghost, for a heartbeat. It begins with a breath that won't settle, then a tightening. You brace against the bedpost, one hand gripping the wood, the other pressed to your belly. The room is dim, firelight low, shadows crawling up the walls like vines. The widow notices first. She rises from her chair without a word and crosses the room. Breathe, she says. You do, but it catches halfway through, sharp and rising. Another pain, stronger this time, deep, low, like your body is folding in on itself. The stranger enters, arms dusted with snow. He stops when he sees you, hand still on the doorframe, snow melting into his sleeve. It's time, the widow says. He nods once. I'll heat the water. No panic, no surprise, just motion. The next hours are a blur of sensation, steam curling from copper pots, linen torn into strips, a bowl of cedar water placed near the fire, its scent calming your throat even as your body strains. The pains come faster, rhythmic, relentless. You grip the widow's arm as she wipes your brow. Almost, she whispers. You want to believe her. You need to. The stranger tends the fire, adds wood without being asked, keeps his distance, but stays close enough that the room never feels hollow. Once, during a contraction that folds you in two, your eyes catch his. He doesn't look away, neither do you. He nods once, slow, like saying, I see you. I will not leave. Another wave hits, this one stronger. You cry out, not in fear but in release. The widow is steady, her voice soft. Push. You do. Twice, 3 times. Then, a cry. Sharp, wet, new. The room exhales with you. You fall back against the pillows, chest rising like it hasn't in days. The widow places the baby on your chest. Warm, slick, breathing. A girl you knew, but it still hits you like lightning. The child curls against you, mouth rooting, hands grasping nothing and everything. The stranger turns his back, gives you privacy, but you see his shoulders drop, tension leaving like smoke. The widow ties off the cord with quiet efficiency. She hums something low, not a hymn, not a lullaby, just a sound, as old as earth. After a while, the baby falls asleep. You lift her gently, cross the room barefoot, and place her in the cradle. It takes her weight like it was made for her, because it was. The stranger speaks without turning. She has a name? You watch your daughter shift, her breath rising and falling. Yes, you say. But you don't speak it aloud, not yet. You sit beside the cradle. The widow wraps a shawl around your shoulders. Outside, snow begins to melt from the porch eaves. Inside, the only thing breaking the silence is the steady, perfect sound of a child just born, dreaming. The first morning after, the house feels different, not warmer, so just steadier. Like the walls know their purpose now. like the wind no longer needs to test the seams. You back with the ache of having given everything and the quiet fear of what it means to have something new. She stirs before you do, the baby. You don't rush. You watch her first. She lies in the cradle, wrapped in the patchwork quilt left behind by a woman who couldn't stay, beneath a roof built by another who chose not to run. Her fingers twitch in sleep. One eye flutters open, then shuts again. She makes no sound. You rise slowly, every joint reminding you what you've done. You cross the floor barefoot, kneel beside the cradle, and place a finger in her tiny palm. She curls around it naturally. You whisper, "You're safe." You're not entirely sure who you're saying it for. The stranger's gone, just his folded blanket near the hearth and a trace of tobacco in the air. He didn't stay for breakfast. Maybe he never meant to. But on the table, beside the tea tin, he left something carved. A small rose, crude, soft-edged, unpainted. You lift it. On the underside, carved with the tip of a blade. For the root. You don't cry, but your throat catches. The widow joins you mid-morning, brings boiled oats with maple and a touch of salt, sets them down without comment, then walks to the cradle. She peers in, not too close. "She fits," she says. You nod. "I was afraid she wouldn't," she adds, "that it was only ever meant for absence." "She fits," you repeat. After breakfast, you open the front door again, this time wide. The snow is soft, melting into rivulets across the street. The sky is bright. Not clear, but forgiving. The town doesn't stir much yet. But it will. You know it. You stand on the porch for a moment, arms folded across your chest, wind curling your nightdress. You breathe in. The air smells of cedar, fire ash, and milk. Later, you feed her near the fire, rock her in your arms, watch her eyes begin to understand light. You hum. A tune that isn't quite a lullaby, not one you remember, one you build as you go. And when she drifts off again, you place her back into the cradle. It rocks gently under your fingers. Just once, you whisper, "You're not what he left behind. You're what I found." The cradle holds her, not because she's light, but because she belongs. Spring creeps in slowly, like a shy visitor, unsure she's welcome. The icicles drip before noon now. The snowbanks shrink like secrets, and the wind, once so sharp, now only brushes your cheeks like the edge of an old song. Inside, the air is different, softer, steeped in something sweeter than stew. You wake before the baby today, not from noise but habit. The kind survival taught you, but something else kept sharpened. You rise and find the fire still breathing. The widow's footsteps pad faintly upstairs. Her presence lingers even when she isn't seen. In the folded laundry, the fresh herbs near the sill, the quiet shift of things that used to be silent. The cradle rests by the window now. You moved it there. After the third morning, she woke, reaching toward the light. She sleeps better there, wakes slower, gentler. When you pick her up, she nuzzles your neck, fists balling in your collar. She smells of cedar smoke and milk and something entirely hers, new skin and old promise. You settle into the rocker, the one the widow gave up without asking. It creaks like an old friend. You pull the shawl tighter. Her head rests beneath your chin. Across the room, the small rose carving still sits on the shelf above the mantel. You haven't moved it. Sometimes you look at it and say nothing. Sometimes you hold it in your palm and remember the stranger who never asked to stay, but stayed just long enough. A knock interrupts the quiet. You stand slowly, cradle her in one arm, and open the door. A girl stands there, 12 maybe. Her coat is too big, her boots scuffed. She carries a letter. You take it, nod your thanks. She runs off without a word. Back inside, the paper smells faintly of wax and distance. You break the seal and unfold it. The handwriting is unfamiliar, strong, angular. To the woman who stayed, I do not know your name, but I know your words. I read them once in the snow, and they didn't melt. He carved for you. I watched him. He never said your name, but he spoke like you were the only person who had never asked him to become someone else. I hope the cradle held. I hope she breathes easy. That's all we're meant to do in this world. A man with no name. You fold the letter, place it under the rose carving, and for the first time since Missouri, you let out a breath you didn't know you were still holding. That night, the baby wakes just once. You feed her in the dark, her eyes barely open, her weight settled perfectly in your arms. Outside, the trees groan with thaw. Inside, the cradle waits, not for a child, but for the next morning. You place her back gently. She doesn't stir. And neither do you, because there's nothing left to run from, and everything left to hold. The town never asks your name again, not because they forget it, but because they begin to learn you by other things. By the way your daughter grips your sleeve when you walk to the well, by the way you hum when shelling beans, by the way you touch the cradle, not reverently, not nostalgically, just right. Like it's always been yours, even when it wasn't. You're not called Everett's girl or the widow's guest. You're simply the woman in the house with the cradle. And that, somehow, is enough. Letters stop coming. Or maybe they never did. You stop checking. Because no one writes stories like this down while they're still living them. One morning, the widow presses a folded cloth into your hands. Her first dress, she says, made from scraps no one else knew how to use. You thank her, not with words, but with arms around shoulders, something women like you do only when silence can't carry it all. Rose stands that day, 2 steps, then a fall, then 3 more like she never questioned gravity at all. The cradle stays in its place. You don't pack it away. You don't give it up. Because it's not just a thing, it's a thread. Between who you were when you arrived and who you had to become. Sometimes, when the house is still and the wind forgets to knock, you walk your fingers along the rail. You find the small gouge at the base, a slip of the carver's hand, never sanded out. You press it and whisper, "It held." You no longer say, "his cradle." You no longer say, "her quilt." You say, "ours," and mean every syllable. Because this life wasn't mailed to you in a parcel. It wasn't promised in ink. It wasn't carved in your name. It was earned. Through storms and silence, through betrayal and breath, through the quiet choice to stay. You light a candle some nights, not for a vigil, not for a ghost, just so she, your daughter, can fall asleep watching a flame that never asks where it came from. And as the shadows stretch long across the cradle's frame, you speak aloud the story you never had to write. I was not a mail-order bride. I was a woman who came anyway, and this is where I rooted. The candle flickers. The cradle stills. The child dreams, and you sleep whole.